Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory to Christ.
Today we heard kind of a weird gospel for this time of year, if you really think about it. Because this gospel seems to fit the mood of Good Friday. And yet we are here in September, which for us Byzantiners represents the beginning of the church calendar. In its wisdom, the church commemorates the cross twice during the liturgical year over and above Good Friday. One of those times is right in the middle of Lent, sort of to give us encouragement in order to keep the fast and to keep the faith until the end of that race, until the end of that struggle to Easter. But it also does it on this date, September 14th, because right at the beginning of the liturgical year, it is recognized that we need a reminder that there is something different about being a Christian, that there is something different about this Jesus Christ. The title of today's homily is Stuck Within Our Aid. Last week I could not be with you because I was at a Catholic conference. Perhaps you've heard these guys on the radio before. It's Catholic Answers. It's on EWTN on the radio, usually I think around 5 to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. And their show is about Catholic apologetics, or giving an intellectual assent to the faith, explaining the Catholic position about all we believe. And from that standpoint, I thought it was an absolutely excellent conference. These guys can preach like you wouldn't believe. But I have to be honest with you. What I want to discuss with you today is the feeling I had from the very first moments of the conference. Because the conference began with a prayer. Now, I've been around the Roman Catholic bloc a couple of times. In fact, there was a time in my life where I went to Roman Catholic Mass every single day. And I truly enjoyed the experience. It was full of joy. But every once in a while, when I think I know where the Roman Catholics are coming from, they throw me a curveball. And they deliver something that I have never seen before. And what they decided to pray to open up their conference was the Angelus. Now, some of you are Roman Catholic, and you probably are familiar with this prayer. I had never heard it before. And so, right from the beginning of this conference, I had this sense of loneliness, this sense of not being part of this great group. There were hundreds of people at this conference. And yet, even though I was Catholic, and even though I was committed to the faith, and even though I had a great intellectual understanding of everything they were talking about, I felt alone, removed from this clan, removed from this cult, removed from this family that was there to proclaim the greatness of Jesus Christ. And then it made me begin to wonder what it's like to be someone coming anew within our parish. You see, there's one fundamental difference I have with those guys that were giving these speeches, these messages, and what I have experienced as a hospice physician. Because they seem to proclaim that why most people leave the church, or most people that are Christians that are not Catholics, have an intellectual disagreement with the church itself. But that has not been my experience. My experience has been more along the lines of people have left our church because they have been wounded, sometimes through no fault of their own. For example, for the divorced among us. For those who just sort of gradually fell away from the church. And they recognized when they stopped going to weekly Mass, or weekly Divine Liturgy in our case, nobody seemed to notice. And they seem to have lost that recognition of the life that comes through the church itself. They are alienated, they are wounded, they are alone. And it takes a great amount of courage for such a person to walk through those doors. And in our country, it makes me wonder if it takes an even greater amount of courage to come through the doors of an Eastern church. I remember the first time I went to a Maronite liturgy, another one of the Eastern churches. I was so overwhelmed that I immediately left. And it makes me wonder if there are a lot of things that we do that we just take for granted. For example, our curious habit of kissing stuff. Seems every time you turn around, we're kissing something around. I would think the average American would find that a little weird. But sometimes I think we get stuck within our own shell, within our own understanding, within our own cultic practices, that we forget what it must be like for an outsider to come into our church and to begin to experience, to see if they could potentially fit in somehow. And so I began to wonder about all of the little things that we do as a church that may give the exactly wrong message to somebody that is trying us out for the first time. That wounded soul who is crying out for a hand to touch their humanity. And one of the things I was wondering about was, maybe something like the way Father Mark points out the visitors when they come in our church. That is very intimidating. This isn't something Father Mark invented. I've had that same experience when I've gone to Greek Orthodox churches and churches of Slavic origin. But again, Eastern churches. But something that is profoundly not Western in the way that it is performed. And then also just the way we come up to do Mirovania, for example. Where Father Mark, he is so fantastic about loving each person as they come. But I actually wonder if when these souls come, they are forced to wait for 15, 20 minutes until Father Mark has a moment to begin to speak with them heart to heart. And this is one of those times where I think we even need your input to tell us, where do you think that we kind of come off in exactly the wrong way? The way counter to the way we wish to reach out and embrace somebody new. Because I think that sometimes we do get lost in our daily routines. And I think even us as a Byzantine church also is afraid of breaking out of our shells, of realizing this Christ crucified. And because this Christ has been crucified and died and arose for our sins, that we forget that we have to go out and proclaim this good news. We have to go out and embrace each and every person. But there's another sense that I wish to discuss with you today. And it is the fact that the cross is on the tetrapod, which is sort of like the minor altar, the altar of the people. Because it is a reminder that all of us are kind of stuck in our own shells. That it seems like today is so busy. Today is so full. that there is no time for us to reach for our spiritual needs, to attend for what is most important in our life, which is our relationship with Christ crucified. And so we say, I will do that tomorrow. Or when I get a better job and I'm more financially sound, then I will have time to pray the way I should. Or maybe when I retire, then I will finally have time to be in church and to attend church the way I should and pay attention to my very own soul. It is as if we are each stuck in our own egg, unwilling to truly live within this love that is Christ, to truly live in this moment, but to figure that we will just hatch tomorrow, that we will just be tomorrow, that I will be a Christian tomorrow. What does it mean to be a Christian? What does it mean to break out of your shell? It means to actually see another person. And to actually see in that other person the Christ that is crucified in them. And want to communicate, and want to be, and want to love them. That's not just for our spouse. That is not just for our children. That is not just for our parish community. But indeed, it is for the whole world. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory to Him forever.